I'm Adam, by the way.
Brent.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
I always forget to send out an email the day of.
Yeah.
With like instructions. I'm pretty good about sending something out the day before.
You're a little herky jerky right now, Brenda.
Does it matter if I go? Yeah, we got some non-alcoholic beverages, some light finger foods. Cool. And
Rashida.
Okay, is our video okay, or are we jerky? Brenda?
Is that any better?
We don't, you're kind of frozen. All we get is your audio.
You all the best part.
I wonder if
Sometimes
it's
it's overloaded here.
I wonder if it's the
it could be. I have HDMI, so we can do that. Let's try it.
So we're switching video. Hold on a second, Brenda.
Let me.
We got lucky and they put us on their under Wi-Fi.
Brenda, you want to wave your hands and say something?
I could hear you.
No, there you are. Hello. You can hear me?
I could hear myself.
No, I think. Oh yeah, you want.
Test.
Say
I can
something.
hear you.
Great. All right. I feel like that's better. She's doing stuff now.
I speculate a future where this is easier.
It'll never be easier.
All right, is our video back?
I can see you now.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's way better.
Hi, Brenda.
How? Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Vittorio, how am I looking? Is my connection all right, or do I?
Yeah, no, I think we're fine now.
Okay. Yay.
No, I think we'll probably wait like 15, 20 minutes for everyone to get here with traffic and parking and go into 16 and then go back down.
Yeah.
Keep an eye
could probably get tape from next door or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab some.
What do you want your slide for that title? Screen was easy for me to see when I was outside.
Oh, yeah. He had a different slide.
I definitely almost sat down and the AI and the military talk was happening.
Yeah, I will stop there. Did you have a slide with the?
Oh,
Brenda, skip ahead to the title slide.
Is that just on the program?
What was weird was the guy was like, "Hey, Brent." No, it's Bart. He goes,
Uh-oh.
"All right. Are you here for this?"
Leave it there till
That-
we're ready to start.
And I was like, "What event is this?" How do you know my name? I don't know how he knew my name. It was super weird.
Is that the one that has to do with the Army's Future Command unit in town?
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
I didn't realize there's already 2 other entities in Capital Factory that are somewhat related to like the American military complex infrastructure being established in Austin.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I went down a real rabbit hole the other day. I think I was further and further down. I was just like, I had no idea what was going on in Austin.
What is this room called at?
Johnny Five.
Johnny Five.
I should probably.
So it's directly across from the bar.
I should probably send out a message.
Well, that could be said for the other one as well, because it's on the other side, across. I would say
That's
across
true.
from,
Behind the elevators.
or
Hidden behind the elevators, you'll find us.
Behind
by
the
the
elevators.
restrooms.
By the ATM.
Between the, yeah. Ask for an ATM and you'll find us. I didn't realize Capital Factory was like a ragtag collection of rooms in the Omni.
They're all over the place.
Well, it's like all this side, it's 16, it's 5, it's 8. Like they've got multiple floors now.
What's in between 5 and 8? Like what's on 6 and 7?
building like regular businesses.
Yeah,
I
just
just
kind of
think
take
it's
over
hotel.
spaces that open up.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Creating.
We have sparkling waters and booming waters in there if y'all want some.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna keep these. Because I can.
Is there a restroom on the wall?
Yeah, it's right there.
How's your tea? Yeah.
So I worked with Eric and Michelle for the time she's visiting my
I am.
She's a florist on.
Oh, fun.
It's very fun, but over here.
Yeah.
I think it's fun things like this, meeting fun people.
How long are you here?
4 months in total. I've been here 2 months, so I'm going home in the exam. Yeah, so good. Well, too much. Yeah, I'm not built for this indeed. I like to have fun as I was saying. I like something I do, but I do.
Oh no, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
She's very tan.
Yeah. I'm not even joking. This is it.
It's good. I'm enjoying it. The project that my main project that I started on in September is called Foresight.
Cool.
And that'll be fun.
Cool. Have you, did I ever tell you about the Institute for the Future? Do you know about the Institute for the Future?
The what?
Institute for the Future, out in Palo Alto. Man, they had some crazy talks.
I was gonna, for one of these, I was gonna do like a retro retrospective on the conference that happened back in May in San Francisco. That one was pretty good too.
Yeah.
There was some pretty out there.
One of the times from graduate school worked out a Student in the Future just recently. And the stuff that they're doing there, it's like a fairly straightforward design centered process. Like it's really
That's
not,
a lot of the.
it's so straightforward, but they're like doing all kinds of bonkers.
One of the interesting things, at least maybe this is just my bias, but I was looking at a lot of the methods they use. I was like, I can apply this to software projects.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. It's probably late. We can do the classic meetup, go around and say our names and what we do and what we came. I can start. My name's Adam. I was co-organizing, now more or less organizing the Austin chapter of the Speculative Futures meetup. It was started 3 years ago in San Francisco by a guy named Phil. He was traveling back and forth from San Francisco to Austin pretty regularly, and I attended a meetup that he did a couple years ago where Jake Dunnigan, who was in town, spoke. And it was really cool, and I wanted to learn more about it and see more of these things happen. So I told Phil I'd help him keep the Austin chapter going. He changed jobs, so he doesn't come back to Austin anymore. So I'm here kind of helping keep this thing going. We do an event once a quarter. Typically, we do them in February, May, August, and November, because those are kind of off months, like no South by Southwest. School's starting, but I don't have kids, so that doesn't affect me. November is a little bit calmer because it's not quite the holidays we do before Thanksgiving. It's not quite the fall rush, and then February is like the nice lull before South by. If y'all have topics that you're interested in or propose certain things, happy to hear it. If you know anyone in town that you think would be interested in speaking at this, that would also be great. But yeah, by day, I work as an interaction designer at Delmet School at UT, in the Design Institute for Health. I work with Eric and Michelle. And I'm part of a design community called Fresh Design, which is how I met Vittorio. And that's my long-winded introduction.
I am Bart Winter. I'm design lead for design systems at Rackspace.
Succinct.
My name is Michelle. I'm a pharmacist by background. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Pharmacy in Dublin, in Ireland. And I'm here on a Fulbright scholarship to work with the guys and look at how design and health can be better combined, particularly in relation to education and med students.
I guess I'm Brent Jackson. I'm a technology strategist and ran the Future Space program for Dell for many years. Currently working with Charles Block.
Hi, I'm Naomi Bourgeois. I'm a CEO of a tech startup that's launching next month, hopefully. Background in engineering.
What is the startup?
Pickleball. It's an online platform. It's called Pickleball.
Cool.
Yeah.
What does it do?
It's an online platform where people can come and, I mean, it had nothing to do with this, but people will go and buy points for a loved one, and that person can use the points for services. So we'll have names, lawn care, meal delivery, beds, rides, etc.
Interesting. So it's like almost a whole currency.
It's like a crowdfunding for help.
So my name's Anil Patney. I'm super excited to be here, that this group is here, so thanks for spearheading that effort. I'm kind of a futurist in a way. I spent the last 7 years hosting community events, and my favorite are hackathons and maker fairs, so I turned into an activist advocating for more hackathons and maker fairs everywhere, and just spearheading the movement. I gave a little workshop here last, I think it was like 3 months ago. most recently, we did this tiny house show at the Travis County Expo Center last weekend. Yeah. So I helped organize that, and my goal there was to merge the hackathon movement with the Make a Fair movement with the tiny house movement of DIYers and makers, and we built a tiny dome at the event and some 3D printed furniture and stuff to kind of like evolve the tiny house movement into,
You had a bunch of 3D printed bases out there, right?
Yeah. Did you make it out there to the event?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thanks for coming. Yeah. That's really good. So, yeah.
I'm Sam. I work in computing systems for kind of it's semiconductors now. It used to be whole systems, but try to anticipate and develop the kinds of processing systems that all your software runs on.
I'm Eric. As Adam said, I work at the Design Institute for Health as a design fellow. Just graduating from the design program there. Before that, I had a background in policy, working in Texas and New Mexico.
Hi, I'm Vittorio. I'm a researcher and designer. I formerly worked with Brenda at the advisory board, now a division of Optum, and do design and research very broadly across a wide variety of subjects over my career. Brenda?
Hi, everybody. I'm Brenda, and I've been just working as a designer and researcher in the healthcare information technology space across a few different companies. So yes, I used to work with Vittorio. I'm about to start a job at another company also in the healthcare IT place, which is tomorrow. So wish me luck, guys. I'm super excited to be here with you virtually. I miss you slightly because I just recently moved out of the Austin area, but thanks for having me, everybody.
Do you want to get started?
Yeah, I kind of gave the spiel about the Speculative Futures group in Austin. Right now it's predominantly on meetup. I think we will, in the coming months, be opening up our Slack. We're still figuring out how we want to go about that. We used, well, still do, but it used to be a little bit more prevalently. We would partner with the Central Texas chapter of the World Futurist Society. A woman named Ann Boyson, who's actually, she's out in the Bay Area right now. She's doing some work with people. And she's introduced us to someone at the name escapes me, the EFF, Electronic Frontiers Foundation. We're gonna see what points of conflict there might be between their group and ours for events and different things. And we do these once a quarter. And I'm always I'm mostly on Twitter and on the internet finding people in town that work within this ambiguous, ethereal space. I think you wanted to say a few things about that.
Yeah, did we need to do anything to get the thing? Is that recording now?
I think it's recording now, yeah.
Did you want to switch to the logistics slide, Brenda? So these slides will be available afterwards through the meetup group. You'll see on your chairs when you sat down there were feedback forms, index cards, and a pen. So if you'll please fill out your feedback form at the end of the talk and pass them forward, or sort of collect them on the door on your way out. It helps Brenda and I know how this talk went and whether you got out of it what we wanted you to get out of it, independent of any feedback you may discreetly give to Adam later. The note cards, the index cards are for your own notes in case you need a piece of paper. Don't use the feedback form for writing your notes because then you can't give it back to us. Please use the feedback form for providing feedback. But also, we're going to be doing written Q&A this time. So rather than, not everyone's always comfortable asking questions in front of a group. So if you have questions during the talk, write down the question on the index card and pass them forward, and then I'll read them to Brenda and she can answer them at the end. This way, everybody gets a chance to ask their question, and nobody has to get in front of an audience. appreciate all of that. And that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Vittorio. Let me step through a couple of slides and you can continue. Did it update?
Yep.
It's a little bit laggy, so. Okay, so today we're discussing what isn't a futures report, what is a futures report, why it's relevant, how to go about creating one, just kind of a framework, if you will, and then what to consider to do next. So we're gonna put this in context of some recent work that we just did, Vittorio and I, focused on identifying futures themes in the healthcare space. So Vittorio's going to tell you a little bit of what isn't, and then you're stuck with me for a while.
Yeah, so what isn't a futures report? So the work that Brendan and I did recently came out of other kinds of innovation and forward-looking research reports that we had done, but none of them were comprehensive, none of them crossed industries, none of them delved into multiple subjects at once, and none of them considered a wide variety of scenario planning. Where we're going to talk about, what Brendan's going to talk about is, what makes a futures report different from all of these. So if you've seen, for example, somebody puts out, here's how drones are going to work in the future of healthcare, say, or a report like that. These in-depth, single subjects, topic reports. Those have a very specific and kind of a biased viewpoint. They assume that there is a place for drones in healthcare, and they don't get into what happens when drones don't succeed, what happens when the entire healthcare system fails. There's not a lot of other kinds of futures, plural, considered in reports like that, so we don't count those. Research proposals are on open questions. If you've ever worked in an org that has dedicated researchers, or where you have like a user experience team that is constantly generating open questions, things we don't know, and things like that in your software or hardware products, you're going to have a backlog of research questions that you want answered. Simply compiling all of these unknowns into a report is not a futures report. On the other side, you probably have new business development ideas or proposals, things that someone in sales or marketing or product development thinks would be a great thing for us to learn about and pursue, and pitches it as a possible future. That's incredibly biased, that's their own opinion, that is not a futures report. And finally, even if you're rolling all of these things up into here's what the future of innovation could look like at this company, kind of into a big, broad, cross-field document, that's still all of those same things with all of their same problems. A futures report has to have a lot more balance to it and be a lot broader than that in order to really be useful as a tool.
Yeah, so what is a futures report? It really is looking across, being broad, like what Vittorio was saying. It's a publication, a compendium, which evaluates topics that are becoming of prominence across a single, or better yet, multiple industries. And according to the industry, a futures topic may seem more or less futuristic and speculative than in another industry. So this happens all the time in healthcare. On the one hand, healthcare can deliver like pioneering, cutting edge techniques for care and treatment. And on the other hand, the healthcare domain can be laggards in adopting technologies, service standards, and compared to other industries like the information technologies industry or consumer electronics, retail, and services, which is why it's important to look across. So what is a futures report? What does it look like? What does it consist of? So we're talking about many themes across society. It can be anchored on one industry, but you might just start with an index of themes. It'll be a theme name. It can have, by default, some sort of general definition. You might be willing to like call out the industries that the theme is found to give you more substantiation, less bias, a better look across, and absolutely your sources. You want to make sure that it's substantiated. And along the way, you want to keep it organized. You can keep it organized a few different ways, just alphabetically, but what's more common is some sort of prominence or ranking. That can be how prevalent, it keeps coming up across a number of sources. And so on the right hand there in the slide, you'll just see kind of like a little excerpt. There's your theme, a general definition, outline of the industries, and then your sources. So I want to show you a couple examples of some reports that I think are very good within the healthcare space. So this is just a page excerpt from Accenture's Digital Health Technology Vision 2018 report. So it's very new. And you'll find that a lot of these big consulting firms will often put out these reports, maybe not every year for every industry, but it does help the fact that they work across so many industries that they put these out. Obviously, to be aware of, and something that we kind of drill in a few times, just kind of what Vittorio was saying, the bias element, they're still trying to sell a service, so you want to make sure it's fairly well balanced. In this case, how they organize the report is really straightforward. They just kind of outline each theme by trend 1, and this one's trend 2, and they have about 4 light pages, very visually appealing, again, thinking about their trying to attract people. But what's really good about this one is that they themselves conduct several of their primary research, so they'll do several surveys, for example, and they'll be able to go ahead and link that information from the report. Another example is also from a consulting firm. This one is PricewaterhouseCoopers Top Health Industry Issues of 2018. This is a very comprehensive report. But to Vittorio's point, even though it's very comprehensive in the healthcare space, but within each issue, they don't go as deep as being standalone reports. They do about three pages per trend. On the left side, you kind of see an excerpt of the trend, in this case, the opioid crisis. And then on the right side, it's just a little excerpt. The third page is also always a page of implications. And this is what is a key indicator of a good report, because it'll kind of tell you what is bad or what is good. So if y'all are into understanding what's happening in the healthcare space, I definitely recommend reading this, and it is linked to from the slides, so you'll have access to it. Another more lightweight example, a little bit more targeting the general audience, it is just J. Walter Thompson's intelligence report. And they specialize on doing reports for many different industries. And this one, in this case, is their Future 100 themes across industries. So this page is an excerpt of theme 88, and they go by category, by industry first. Within that, I don't know what their prominence ranking, if any, is. But this really is that general quick definition, 2 paragraphs. But what really stands out about this one is, again, that third paragraph that they have it for all of their themes, which is why it's interesting. What is the difference here? It's missing a little bit more of the implications, but it does kind of get you into that thought-provoking mindset. So those are some few examples to check out. Again, they're linked from the report, from the slides, excuse me. But, so why do we want to create a futures report? So as we mentioned, the goal is to examine emerging trends or topics that are slightly starting to pick up, but they still have a lot of adoption potential. And there could be a few different reasons. Something as straightforward as you just want to do it for the fun of it. I like it, I kind of geek out about it, it's just fun to see what's happening. It's also an opportunity to keep up with just your practice or something like that, to learn about or keep up with the other industry. It's a great exercise. If you have new hires and you want to kind of teach them a little bit of research practice, but also get them to learn about the domain, definitely an exercise worth doing. Overall, this report, because it looks across, is really a landscape that can help you assess blind spots in your company. So this can be the starting point into creating something or informing something like a SWOT analysis. Sorry guys, I'm hearing my audio a lot.
Working on the side.
No, it sounds good to us.
Okay, it was all right, but now I hear a lot of feedback. Okay, I'll try to power through. So, because we're looking across to determine both things that are happening and how that could be good or bad, like just generally, it can help us make weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Outline, I don't know if you've seen those, they're kind of like a matrix, it's called a SWOT analysis. Those are very popular in certain corporate environments, but they are often not substantiated on any research. Or they only focus on research of their competitor, but not looking across markets. So their strategic value is very narrow compared to something that is more long-term and looks across trends in industry. So that's SWOT analysis. It can also function as a starting point to several of the things that Vittorio said, like business development proposals that are a little bit more substantiated. This is not bad, it's just kind of an entry point to do that work. Where do you want to evolve your service? What additional products? How you change your business model, etc. So let's talk about how to create one. Well, leading into creating one, you want to make sure that you center on what is the goal that you have or that your directives have for creating this one, to determine if it is the right exercise. And once you've determined that, we can move on to the actual creation piece. And really this is just one way of doing it, which is the way we followed, Vittorio and I. We kind of did a task-based approach where we just batched all our task types. So we just collected information first, then we read, then we cleaned it and synthesized, which results in the output of the report. So when we're thinking about collecting, what are we trying to look at? Well, we want to inform our report. It can be informed by a couple of items.
That's good.
So we read that there's reports and articles that aren't
Brenda?
firsthand. Yeah.
Sorry, we lost you at recent primary sources.
Okay.
Can you go?
Okay, yes. So a report can be informed by recent primary sources. Primary sources are just the direct measure direct collections of information. That's kind of getting off your desk and going out in the field. That's census data, survey data, interview data, direct publications of experiments. But because you want to look across, the reality is that you likely won't be the one conducting all of those interviews or gathering all of that data. So that's why you want to focus on recent secondary sources. So that is what's called best research. Someone else has already done the primary research, and you can find those sources or you can find someone's aggregation of that. That's articles that aren't pertain to the primary research, like news articles, white papers, and publications that will in turn cite primary and secondary sources, thus making them tertiary, but it continues that way. So recent secondary sources is the easiest way to do it because you can just do it if you have access to the internet. But you want to make sure that you pick up on, are these sources basing their information on valid information, or are they just opinion pieces? You do not want to focus on opinion pieces that do not have any factual backing. Okay. So a report should look out both out of industry and within the industry research, which is something both Vittorio and I have already mentioned. The easiest way to do out of industry research is to go to Wikipedia's industry outline. That'll give you a huge list of industries, more than you knew existed. And you want to make sure you hit a few of those. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't try to get the full list of industries, but focus on a few of them. For example, for the healthcare future report that we did, we're anchored on healthcare, but we want to see what is the education space doing, what is the services, the space, utilities, warfare, defense. So you want to focus on a few of those. We looked at the design and fashion industry as well. Some of them may overlap a lot, so you can by default say, oh, we're just going to focus on this one. So pick about 5 different industries, 5 to 6, or something that is manageable that provides diversity. And then within your industry. So again, the reason for doing the outside industry is because you just don't know what you don't know. What may be pioneering in one industry might not in the other, and vice versa. It just helps you to create that cross-pollination that is needed for creative thinking. Okay. So a few things to consider during your source hunt is, before I move on to that, consider that they may have a look-back range. So you don't want to look back too far back. So that's why I listed recent. You can set a parameter of 2 years. If you're really having a hard time finding something, you might go further to another year. Be cautious. That might mean that when that information was first published, it was really, truly pioneering and innovative, and very few people had their finger on the pulse. And that's fine if it really is providing some backing to the report you're putting together. But don't go too far in the past, because then, defeats the purpose. But where do you find that information? Use in general media, industry publications, and industry associations. So the specialized news and industry associations, for example, healthcare, there are a few publishers out there that just do online news, focus on the healthcare space. Some of them you have to subscribe to, some are free, some you can get from your public library. Think tanks, consulting firms like we've seen today, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Accenture. Don't forget about your comfort. Often there's a lot of research conducted and buried and forgotten. Try to see if you can get some of that out. Are they putting out a white paper about a topic? Now, for all of these, some things are going to be more biased than others. Some sources are going to be more biased than others. It's just important to keep that in mind. Shalom, again, have some factual evidence, and you're going to want to have both the good and the bad. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So as you're going, your goal is to collect a lot of sources. I can't give you sources and then of industries. So it's important to keep it organized. You can have a file structure from the beginning where you divide your research by industry. That way you make sure you're hitting an even spread. And keep track of your sources. So as you go ahead and identify bibliography. I think I just made that word up, style. And you can do the more academic, like an APA or an MLA style, or you can just do something simpler that works for you, that you can do on the fly, so that way you don't end up doing what I always did in college, having to find the article again and having to my time at the end of the report when I wish I was already done. So what we did is an easier version. Our style was just the publisher, comma, the title of the article, or whatever it was, and we linked it to the source directly, and then the year. So after you're done collecting, the obvious logical step that we discussed is to read. Excuse me. So as you go, you want to do preliminary theming. So when you read, identify the topics that are being addressed by each of the sources, each of the articles, and keep a running list of them by source. That could be underneath the bibliography of each of your sources, for example. These may not be the last things that make it into your report, but it's just easy to, as you read, kind of you're taking notes. You can do it on OneNote or Evernote or your word processor, and just start bulleting themes. Don't worry if you're using the exact same phrase or verb or noun for the same concept later. You'll have time to go back and clean that up. And really keep notes and track of the bias of the source and the validity of the source. Don't be afraid to dismiss a source and trash it because they didn't have any substantiation. They were very opinion-based. They only saw one side. They didn't want to debate the other side. Ask yourself, is it heavily oriented towards one direction? Keep notes. It might be oriented towards a direction, but they might have a lot of data behind it. So you might not necessarily want to discard that because we want to make sure that report covers considerations that are both positive and negative and even neutral of addressing or not this theme, topic, or trend. Okay. So that's, you collected, you read, and as you went, you started taking some notes and doing some of the study work. If you do it like that, it'll make the next and last step, which is really creating the report, quite easy. Vittorio and I did that in tandem. I think it worked pretty well for us. So moving into theming and synthesizing. Begin by extracting and ordering overarching themes. So gather the list of preliminary themes that you have, and this time you can take them kind of out of each of the sources and just kind of clean them up. Which ones meant the same concept, it's just a different word you use. So that's when you want to see a prominence for repeat instances. So how often is this showing up? And if there are instances that feel too much the same or are significantly overlapping, clean those up, roll those up, but consider that things are mutually exclusive. Rather, they should each be able to stand on their own. So I'll use an example. For healthcare, there's a theme of healthcare consumerism. And out there in many markets, there's a theme of increased consumer expectations. These kind of overlap, but they definitely stand on their own, and I'll explain why. Healthcare consumerism is the trend of adopting more retail-oriented approach to delivering care. So that's where you see them in clinics come into play, just kind of more that convenience of going to the store, not having to go to the hospital. And on the other hand, increased consumer expectations is just about overall convenience and ease of use and direct customer support. So clearly they overlap in that convenience factor and that taking care of that customer. But the reason we kept them as separate themes is because, believe it or not, these concepts are fairly novel in the healthcare space, and it's very important for healthcare to pay attention to this. But there are some aspects that may not necessarily be adopted in the healthcare space just yet that can be found in the just general increased consumer expectations. So there's no cut and dry magic formula for this. You have to ascertain how prevalent is it within this domain to define, should it stand on its own, or does it have a twist for this domain like it often does for healthcare? A macro could be just that overall increased consumer expectations. In defining, are same or can they stand on their own even though they're very related? Make sure you can still clearly define them. Like, what is that angle of each of those themes? And then you want to tend to the lone instances. Just because you didn't see it pop up, like one of the prominent ones that you evaluated first, does not mean you should get rid of it. Evaluate how prominent is it in one domain versus others. Maybe it's because in that domain it's just not prominent, but it is in others. Or maybe it is kind of really at the starting point. And we all know that, we cannot predict the future, but you can start to see what is the data behind this and could there be potential in this thing. So you definitely want to start to keep a pulse on that and not necessarily discard it. And as you're thinking of your themes, you're really constructing your index for your report, which is why you want to define your order. You can either define it again by some sort of ranking or prominence across how many industries does this present itself, or how prevalent does it seem to be, how many sources are talking about it that you found. So find a ranking, just find some sort of order and be able to communicate what that order is to your audience. So you want to start your report like you've created your index of themes, and that will just be your checklist to make sure you're hitting all of those. And later, if you want to put together a nice report with pagination, then you can go back and add those numbers to your index. But when you start, we want that general definition. For us, our audience was executive leadership, so it was important to keep it quick and easy to digest. Consider who your audience is going to be. But remember, even though if you go on in more detail, like the PricewaterhouseCoopers report that I presented earlier, it's not an in-depth exploration of one subject. It's of all the things. So you want a fairly even level of depth. So if you're going to go deep on one, consider that you should go deep on all the other things. So that's why we recommend to be able to generally define it, provide some data behind it, but not go too into the weeds with it. Aside from providing a general definition, what is really important to add is the position of this theme across the different industries or domains that you've found. So what that means is asking yourself how this technology, service, or cultural concept is being leveraged in XYZ industry. Are others thinking or talking about using it in a different way? How? And what are the benefits they are seeing or not seeing? What are those limitations? This is not a dissertation either, so just kind of have some general examples of what is being done in the space, what is the benefit, what is the limitation. Likewise, position the theme within your anchor domain. Is this a theme that you already see happening out there in your domain? Or could it be adopted some more? And along the thought process of could it be, ask yourself what if. So consider the quick implications of being able to leverage this topic or theme and trend in your domain or not. Ask what if this isn't leveraged or taken into consideration by your industry? What if it is? Or even similar to what Vittorio was saying at the beginning. What if healthcare crumbles? I know it sounds a little doomsday. That is not necessarily the objective, and the objective is not to do an end-up scenario planning. It's just to center the theme, and often trends can have by default either a very positive connotation of like we're progressing, we're moving forward. For some audiences, it can have a more negative, more fearful connotation of like, oh, we don't know what this technology does yet. So you want to capture both ends of that spectrum. And then I couldn't come up with a better name for this. It's just other considerations. Just poke your brain, ask yourself questions that will help provide more of that context to that theme. What are aspects to consider, other aspects to consider within your domain? So you can think of, is the market saturated already in this space for this, or is there still more room for growth? I'm going to share an example. It's not the newest in the healthcare space, but I really want to drill into those what ifs and other considerations and just try to do a little bit of analytical thought into it. But you're not doing a dissertation or scenario planning here. So a theme, mobile technology in healthcare, which in healthcare is also known as mHealth. It can be related to telehealth. So not the newest of trends, but definitely not a saturated thing. So let me define it. mHealth consists of delivering healthcare services digitally leveraging the convenience of ubiquitous mobile devices such as tablets. Its adoption continues to grow and has not yet reached saturation. So I've defined it and I've kind of already positioned it a little bit within the market. Now let's move on. It provides the advantage of increasing access to care as it doesn't require a patient to go to a facility. It can be more easily scheduled and can facilitate providing care in remote locations. So I'm very succinctly outlining the benefits. However, there are barriers to adoption and the benefits it can provide. Often remote and rural locations do not have good network access, and patients themselves may not have the economic means to have a device or the ability to operate one. So there are clear advantages, but there might be clear limitations for a certain population, of a socio-economic standing, of a technology literacy standing. So really, who is this technology going to benefit? Now, that further examination, that is room for an in-depth report. But this, just these 3 paragraphs, introduce the concept and gets you thinking of what could be, what is, both positively, negatively, and just in the neutral, it is what it is form. So that is what we recommend aiming for when Vittorio is talking about being, and I was talking about being mindful of bias. We're not advocating for or against this concept. We're just getting you to ask yourself more questions about it. And truth report should be that starting point to ask those questions. And these are just my sources, and if you're into healthcare, you can click on them and like read some more. So what happens next? You've created your report. Ideally, you've put an index, and you've been kind for other people that are going to read it. And you have these themes defined with your sources for further research. When you think of what happens next, really think of what your goal was with your directing, whoever directed you to create the report, or even yourself, within yourself. What was your goal? Next clue, evaluating specific themes in detail to answer the certain questions that you hopefully were able to facilitate because you sparked people's minds and curiosities. That can be working on speculating on the impact of one theme over another. So that's a really interesting exercise. So how would, let's just say, the trend of subscriptions and memberships in general impact healthcare? And it already is. That's that one slide about the J. Walters report. Just think about Amazon and PillPack and just like all the subscription services that are now finally emerging in the healthcare space. So you can speculate about the impact of one thing over the other. You can develop a business proposal after you've done more research. If this is just a jumping point to being able to do that more research, because maybe you've got just the right amount of information for your executive sponsor, whoever's sponsoring the potential for a project, to say, okay, yes, I need to know more about this and what can we do here. But please, 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 the main thing is don't just create it and forget it. Show it love throughout the year, see how things are shaping up or changing. Maybe set yourself to, at the end of the year, kind of reevaluate or at the beginning of next year, what are things that we can drop because we realize they just don't fit anymore in this landscape, or things that are emerging in the landscape. And it'll be so much easier because it will just be adding to the work you've already created. So that is all I have for today. Vittorio, everybody? Yeah, please raise down your questions. Vittorio will come up.
Anybody have questions? 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 Question from the audience. How did you acknowledge and counterbalance for bias?
Okay, so you can try to see within each source. By default, sources, especially if you're sourcing a lot of your stuff from news media, will have a kind of lean one way or another in certain subjects. So you want to make sure you urge yourself to say, okay, so that didn't agree with this, or someone that saw it from a different point of view, where could I find that information? Challenge yourself to do those searches. I just finished grad school, and my project was about that, about bias and sources. You have to just acknowledge that you're going to have a bias, the media's going to have a bias, so that's why it's really important to have a checklist, if you will, where you ask yourself questions. Does the source present the view and different data to back it up? If it doesn't present different points of view, then it's your job to find the source that does present that other point of view. What I mentioned, especially when you're thinking about things, is what I mentioned earlier to think about is there are going to be people that are really enthusiastic of what all this new technology or this new business model can represent to the world. And there are going to be people that are very skeptical about that. So try to find those, but make sure that everybody's going to have an opinion. There's some factuality to it. So what made someone say that, oh, this technology is going to pick up and ripple everywhere? Is it because there's a lot of adoption mechanisms in place already or not? Ask yourself those questions. So try to balance perhaps the bias by looking at the types of sources and creating diversity in the sources, and looking at the different points of view and the data to back those up.
Do you know qualified? Like to say this data was only collected with college-age people, and so we don't know how much this applies to young people, old people, people who don't have access to
Exactly.
college. Like, do you document that actually in the report, or like in the sources? You say, asterisk this source, we only have a certain amount of confidence in this source. Like, how do you preserve that?
Yeah, so depends on the depth that you want to go in your report. You can just make sure that you have sources that talk about it if there's more interest to pursue and learn more about the subject. What I would recommend, if your audience, in this case, our audience with executive leadership, they don't have like a lot of time to read this. You keep it at more high level, so you may call out like a demographic component. So, for example, that mobile technology in healthcare, I could easily add a little bit more information there, where I'd say, well, it can make people, it can facilitate and add convenience to care for people that have access to the technology, which means they have good network, they have access to the device, and they have literacy and that. But so I'm qualifying that, but I'm also qualifying. So for these people that do not have that may be in remote locations with really bad connections, then they might not reap those benefits. So you can qualify it at a larger, more abstract space if you're going to keep it very succinct. And then just make sure that your sources can speak to that in more detail. If you want a report that already has some more detail, like the Pricewaterhouse report, go ahead and add some of that information more directly.
Thank you.
Following up on that, on how you cite sources, so how do you recommend handling privileged versus public sources of information? For example, sources that you have access to that are under NDA, if there are ethical concerns, or if you have primary sources that you want to protect.
Yeah, so, and this may often be the case if you are going to use, let's just say research that was done internally for your company. On that end, you make sure you have clearance from your company if this is meant to be a public case. On the end of other sources that maybe behind a paywall or restricted, that doesn't keep you from being able to cite that source in your bibliography or anything like that. But at the end of the day, like, you're not sharing that source directly. I'm not giving you that paywall paper for information that is, well, I guess I already covered the NDA. Like if it's information within your company or something like that. See what degree that NDA applies to. If you were hoping to put the exact primary source number or 80% of whatever, and that's proprietary work, then you might want to check with your company, with your legal department as to how they handle that. More often than not, and I just saw, I think it was on Immigrant the other day, if it's a research that is being published and you have to go through a paywall, if you contact the author directly, they have the ability to release that work for you to credit, like to cite in other items.
Can you talk more about the development timeline? How long for each phase of this group of creation?
Okay, so I believe what we did, at least Vittorio and I, was it about a week for each phase? Vittorio, I think that's what we did. We divided in terms of Vittorio tried to find across other industries, and I tried to go in the healthcare industry. We had other projects as well going on, of course, but so that's what we did, and I believe we kept it to about a week for each of them. To find to what timeline you have, like if it's a project for yourself and for your entertainment and also for learning, how much time do you have to devote to it? I would recommend go ahead and outline that for yourself and find a pace. So I think like something like a week for each phase or 2 weeks for each phase. That makes it so it's easy for you to understand, oh, I'm on this week, it's time to kind of get this wrapped up and move to the other things. Because you can always go into the black hole that is the internet, right, and be absorbed and just be boggled down. So think realistically, how much research are you capable and able to read before you become overwhelmed or tired, and be mindful of not being fatigued. You want to look across, and that's why, as I mentioned, maybe consider 5 or 6 different industries, but within those industries, determine, okay, how much time do I have to read and find articles for each of them. So not a set in stone. It varies according to your lifestyle and other responsibilities.
Yeah, on the cross-industry spectrum that I was working on, I ended up pulling easily twice as many industry and papers that I could actually fit. So I pulled everything across industries, and then I realized there's no way I'm going to get through all of this and had to cull our list of industries down and really narrow it down just based on the sheer volume that we were able to dig up just from the available sources to core ones that we thought would provide the most diversity in that research. Okay, speaking of reading and putting the report together, for synthesis, do you use any tools to help you theme in a visual manner?
So I didn't for this report. I have for other work projects. I've used the old, well, there's an old and a new version called Saturate app, and that is an app that is free and fairly simple, but it helps you tag content and create things and manage things pretty easily. The thing with that is you basically have to copy the content and upload it into the app. There are other annotation apps, some that I've heard are pretty good but are under paywall. Vittorio, I think you've done research on annotation applications before. I just used a Word document. Other friends I know, like sometimes will use something like Excel and position things in different, and to cross-reference what the sources are.
For the first one, did you say saturate app?
Saturate app. So I use that when I'm analyzing interviews that I've conducted as part of my user research practice. And the thing there, also be conscientious, like, are you uploading content that has some sort of privacy? In healthcare, it's always the matter of personal health information, or NDA behind it into a service that you don't know where the servers are or how they're protected. So if you're doing this for your work, more often than not, what I've found is they don't have a piece of software that's been okayed that it really is good for theming, and I just either do it with Excel or do it with a OneNote or a Word document. But if that's not a concern, if this is all public information and there's no creative license issue or any other license issue, then the app is one I like. Vittorio, do you remember some of the other apps you've researched?
Yeah, we evaluated a bunch of them on the research side, and we didn't like any of them. We always end up back in Word, standard Word highlights, and then dumping it into Excel. The Optimal Workshop has some tools that are okay if you're willing to do things the way Optimal Workshop wants you to do it. It's not a very flexible workflow. It's very dedicated to their systems, but they do have some ways to generate visualizations and tree diagrams and other stuff that's useful for that kind of work. Okay, let's do. How do you express in the report the likelihood of impact? And I assume this means the likelihood of the theme hitting reality. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah.
So you can communicate that explicitly and implicitly. So implicitly can be if you have an order or a prominence ranking that is based on like this, really like everything is going in the direction, picking up in every other industry, and it seems pretty evident. So that's kind of a new way of doing it. Explicitly, you have to kind of call out why this is kind of ripe for happening. So as part of the considerations and implications, or even like the other reports that had the why it's interesting. So you can, if you want your report to really focus on those things, you can have a paragraph where it says, why this matters now, and have a formulation there. So I think a lot of it is really that general idea of like considerations, like how saturated the market is of this thing in other industries, and if you can more clearly articulate spaces where this is picking up. So, for example, you might be able to leverage this. Let's say when we're talking about wearables, which is still kind of a thing, especially in healthcare, talking about wearables meeting the EHR, Walmart just filed a patent for several things like that connect those two, and that have to do with biometrics and accessing their people's electronic health records. So you can kind of pinpoint, are others starting to do that, or they might not be fully tangible yet, but they're taking the steps to do that. So they're in talks, or they're in talks about a merger, or in talks about changing their service model, or they filed a patent. So if there's those types of indicators, then you can go ahead and call them out.
And going back to what Brenda said about implicit indicators, the predecessor to this report was a roll-up of internal research and past and internal product concepts and things like that, that was explicitly structured by our internal level of confidence in these being viable in the market based on the recent corporate and executive strategies that had been defined. So in this new world order of this is now the company's interest and pursuits, let's restructure and reorganize all of our past efforts to make it fit into that framework, and that changes what we now think is viable, both whether the company is capable of executing on it now, and also can the market accept it in this quadrant of likelihood. So the past research that kicked off this report was structured in that very explicit way by defining those. I'll take this next one. How did you sell the value of this project to get the green light? So we've done all of this. So all of the research, I say this is not a future report at the beginning. We've done all of the kind of work before, and in each time we emphasize this is not a broad view of the medium-term future, because it is so narrow and narrowly defined by this one research department's viewpoint or this one product group's viewpoint. This is not a broad spectrum analysis of everything that we could possibly be involved in, and you're only getting this narrow slice. And we just repeat this over and over as we do these one-off individual narrow slice reports, and then we get the call, I just realized that all of these are really narrow slices of views. Can you do something that's broader and that kind of gives us a broader perspective? Yeah, that would be a great idea. That's a really great idea you have. We should do something like that. I'll get back to you in 3.5 weeks. That's how that worked out. Brenda, the last question we have here. Go ahead.
Hold on, I just wanted to answer that. I think that you can also pinpoint at, for example, in the healthcare space, people have historically thought very narrowly, but then you have other people that aren't from the healthcare space and they're trying to come in, right? And what they're doing is looking more across and trying to form these partnerships and there's mergers. When you bring that up, I feel like that's when executives might get a little bit more out of the fire underneath their seat to see, okay, you don't have to also go too far away. We're not going to do, we might not need to invest on something that is healthcare meets ballet. I'm sure there's a way to connect that, but it could be health insurance buying a pharmacy benefits manager, or buying a life sciences, or connecting with your 23andMe testing kit. So you can still look across, but be in a comfortable zone as a starting point.
The last question, unless anyone has any others, is what methods do you have to detect weak signals non-obvious disruptions and opportunities there?
Yeah, so that's a good one. I think when I said, don't disregard the lone instance, if you're only seeing one item or it's very rare and you can't really find a lot of information, well, first challenge yourself to find more information and see if there's more information in the industry that you haven't explored. Also see, I believe will like just not have a lot of research behind it or data behind it. It's going to be difficult to ascertain 100% that this is not going to happen, but that's why the report can introduce the concept, but that's why the work doesn't end at the report. That's when you start and see, okay, is there really something there? Where is this coming from? How developed is this technology or this concept? How are people changing culturally, if it's a cultural thing? But additional research, you want to say, okay, let's do some more. If I can't find research behind it, then that's when, if there's interest to invest and learn more about that item, then you have to put in the research, or else you're not really going to know how far you can go with the theme, and you might just be stuck investing in a weak signal, which is not the intent.
And going back to what Brenda said at the beginning about diversity is incredibly important, in that what is a weak signal in one industry may be really obvious in another industry. So a good example is the Future Today Institute. They put out a great futures report. It's really broad. They give examples across multiple industries. And they've got a whole section in the very back that's literally labeled weak signals. One of the weak signals in their 2018 report is quantum computing. But I am sure there are half a dozen quantum computing affiliated startups on the 16th floor here. They have no idea, like the Future Today Institute has no idea what to do with it. But you've got, quantum startups in Austin, you've got Really Strange Loop here, I'm sure there are places on the 16 that have it, that they do feel like they know what to do with it. So what is not obvious for one group may, and be a weak signal for them, may be something valuable for something else. And that's why that diversity is important. I think that's all we've got.
I have one last comment, because I always do. So, when you're also thinking and looking across, one thing I mentioned is consider industries that you might traditionally not or innovative. When Vittorio came, we were formulating what industries to work on. My family works in the agriculture industry, and I said, look at agriculture. And by default, a lot of people may not think that there's a lot of innovation in farming because they generally think of farming like it was back in the day. But there's a lot, and the value in us exploring what is happening in agriculture and seeing how that can be applied to healthcare is that agriculture is at scale. It has to feed all of humanity. So think of other industries and think, okay, they might not be conventional, or I might not think they're innovative, but do they work at scale, or do they get really specialized and do very well? Then examine that. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Thanks. I'll take your feedback forms before you go.
And
You have time to hang out?
yeah, we have the space till 9. So you guys can hang out if you want to hang out. I'll probably hang around here till 9, and then I'll roll my cooler back out to my car. I rode my skateboard, so I put my cooler on the skateboard.
Oh, is that where you're going?
Yeah, I rolled it and I didn't want to carry it. I could carry it though.
Bring your walking balls. just sit on it.
That'd actually be fun.
That was great, thank you.
Thank you, that was brilliant.
Thanks for coming out.
Hey, that was awesome.
Thanks for setting that up. We'll see.
Thanks for coming, yeah. Those are,
Thank you very much.
we're allowed to talk about
Yeah, we can.
I'm not sure I understood what
So
she
are you
said.
from Ireland or?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'm a Neil, nice to meet you. You still have your accent, I lost mine. Like, I don't know how you did that. Like, do people get really confused?
with regards to what?
Oh, yeah, right? You have to slow it down.
She mentioned Accenture's 2018.
Yeah, then you have to like add the beginning and end
Then
words.
also PricewaterhouseCoopers report, and then Walter report.
Sorry.
They're like,
Paul, we reviewed so
that's
many
like
of them.
makes it
Right.
harder.
I'm never going to
Like, slowing
remember
it
all
down,
of the ones,
definitely.
but it'll be in the.
Right, right, right.
So you walked to Thompson and
How long has it
intelligence
been, like-
report,
I wonder if
neutral
you
100 feet.
just
That sounds right.
Oh, yeah, just so you.
Yeah, I'm going home in 2
Are you?
Oh.
Are you still doing? So what do you?
I finished. It was a
I am. Right next to
an
it.
hour. Oh no, it was all great. It was all great.
You have to slow down. You have to slow down. Inevitably, if you keep slowing down, you'll eventually just change.
Designing
And
Like literally like a week or two.
Yeah.
Well, we can
The
stuck to it.
research is great, and that's what
It's the future, right?
Yeah. The future is now.
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah, it's just so different after we got acquired earlier this year, and it's just so different culturally.
research, the features, the.
Yeah.
For something like this.
It's very creative.
Yeah, I worked really hard to have publication and presentation as part of the culture.
Or
Often was not
I mean, to me, this is all about research. It is.
just from a, like,
There's
there's no way for a designer to go talk with her.
kind of bringing around, bringing everything together in some kind
It's like,
of
this is how
compelling visual
designers
way to
communicate
try
and
to
learn
such
and improve.
information is pretty cool.
To make public at some level, at least have the opportunity to do it. There's just no way to do it.
We've got a weekly UX demo. We've got 30 to 50 to join. Two-thirds are
That's fine.
That means a third art.
That means a third out, right, which is great, which is really great. So we get some senior leadership, we have one senior
Okay,
leader
right here is
who
research.
watches every video.
And all those points together.
Comments.
Yeah,
Sends a little, this is what I
Yeah,
thought.
that was.
Everything
Oh,
else,
savage.
which is a huge, my team is presenting for the next 2 weeks. It's been a while.
It's funny, I was just talking to somebody who used to work at Rackspace. Rackspace participated in the South by competition a few years ago. And yeah, they participated with the drone competitions. And I participated in that competition also. Rackspace took video of me and posted on their blog, but their YouTube, they like hit a bunch of channels on their YouTube, like hit a bunch of like old videos on their YouTube channel, and so it's gone now. And I'm like,
So are you?
I need to find somebody in like Rackspace marketing or communications to get that video back because it has me in it.
If you want, I can ask around, I've got, I know.
And yeah, I mean, that would be awesome.
It was the girl that I was going to General Assembly with, was there, Natalie, yeah, she was nice.
Because I went looking for it for something else. I'm just like, yeah, let me send you some links of this drone thing I did, and it's gone. I'm just like, what? That's so unfair.
You met
We're good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too. Well, yeah, I'll ask around. No, it's just talking with. She's actually a former rapper now, but but
This
she's
is-
leadership of the marketing team, so the very least kind of like her who knows who.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was there recently.
Yeah.
But like Rackspace's YouTube channel goes back a few years now.
Yeah, so we,
like-
right, we got acquired by Apollo, so we were a public company and they privatized them. And it was like, they shut down just a ton of stuff. And
It sounded like a great
It's like what happened with us, like
Yeah,
just
that's
all,
what-
just like overnight, it's just like all kinds of things were suddenly
Right.
different.
But what they
Sole person.
they dismantled some of the unhealthy
So they think of it
patterns, just cut them out, like they just don't exist, there's no pathways for that to happen anymore. So there was some things that are really great about those patterns and some things that are super unhealthy, and they were just like uninterested, so it killed a lot of things that pushed us forward in a lot of ways, but also built deep divisions within data divisions. We had to go do.
If I did nothing, when I say that,
It was great, people did all kinds of cool shit all the time. But nothing talks to each other, there's no data sharing, there's no way to run analytics on it, there's no way to, and they never devoted any resources toward building APIs to surfacing that data. So we have 15 portals, right? And it was because they said go do.
I know.
And so what
And
kind
so
of
they kind of
like
killed some of that go do thing. So a lot of people were like, this isn't my reckless anymore. But we're also now.
You're in our like email.
Really?
Alignment.
So you're seeing like
Which is like naturally happening because you don't have right. Those things just kind of dissolve. Teams just got dissolved. Like you are not going to work on that anymore. And half the team is like, well, screw you. This is a project we've been working on. I've been passionate about this for 2 years. You're going to kill my project? I'm out of here. But then people that have stuck around are forming new teams. And that's who have all this really great expertise all over
But that
the
whole
country.
just
All together to solve a problem together. And it's created a totally different approach to problem solving within those teams. So that's been
Because they all have the perspective.
Right. Right, and so it's like one of those things, when I first moved to the Bay, like my very first meetup, a designer said, the best advice I ever got was to live outside of the Bay for every 2 years that you live in. Because you get that's totally, right, and so we were there for 2 years and then we was for as long as we were there. But they're totally right. Shake up the perspective. So it's been kind of cool seeing some of those.
Those things are marathons. It's like an acquisition is a marathon. It's more like if that happens and you don't completely hate everything, obviously some people did. But if you don't completely hate everything, like
self-selecting group of people.
the best thing, sometimes the best thing ever is exactly that. You didn't outlive everybody that's shitting on it.
Right.
And then see what happens. Like, so you get to take advantage of whatever comes next.
Right. There are people who don't know how much fun it was when the CEO was standing in front of the customers. Hey, you guys! Saying kind of inappropriate shit and just kind of being like, a CEO that you can just email and be like, hey, can you do this thing? And it's like, yeah, I'll totally show up for it. Like that was. We also.
And they even tell you, they're like, oh, if you have anyone
Like,
decent,
credit
then
their funds,
there's a chance that it might solve it, but there's also a chance that it might die.
Of our revenue comes from one thing. He basically like unfunded. Right, so like just like critical leadership failures.
Yeah.
At the same time, you lose some good work, but you also gain some.
Maybe provides growth space for
That's what happened with the design system. Like it was super unhealthy. It was
She was kind of the
toxic.
She was a big wig for a while back in the day. She was big.
Toxic part. So she's everything was wrong. The relationship between design and application. And then things transitioned and people left and new people came. So we're like, yes, go. Let's, you know what, I'm gonna give you an engineering class and see what happens. Okay, let's do this. Right, and that wouldn't, that investment wouldn't have happened if Apollo hadn't brought us and said, well, what are you gonna do to solve one problem? So, what are the problems? Well, inconsistency, this, that, and the other. What are you doing to fix that? There's a design system project.
Oh, you drive fun this side of the road.
It was quite.
That wouldn't happen without Apollo. So they've got an idea. Let's see.
It was,
Oh, yeah.
Good luck, I hope it keeps getting better.
Yeah, you should. I will,
Yes.
That's
That's a part of it. Yeah, it is. Even the people that live here that are local in downtown that have a car are still like, that's too far. Like, we don't go out of this. And I'm like, you gotta go. It's like, it's better on appendicitis because there's less traffic and you're out.
I'm gonna say that after this.
It would make you feel, yeah, it was really good. It was a good show. Like there's school buses that got converted, like there's school buses.
Thank you.
There's like, yeah, little tiny houses. There's like RVs, Airspeeds, just weird, like just everything. People thought of as and I feel like the culture's a good fit right there. Like everybody in Europe have already been obsessed. Like we grew up that way. Like I grew up in England and Birmingham City. Yeah. But my family lives in Brighton now on the coast. Yeah. I know. I just spent a month out there. It was so cool. I went and saw all my cousins. We were just talking about how they had a wedding out there. It was like out in the countryside. The weather was so sunny. I got sunburned because of the weather. I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, wow. Like, I just didn't expect it to be this warm because it never is. Yeah, it's so like green and it kind of reminds me. I haven't been tired yet. I was wanting to go because I remember back in the day when I was young, it's £13 to get a ferry ride from Cornwall, I think. And I was like, one day I'm going to go to Ireland, but I just never made it. I was like, I'm sure it's not this. I've been here 4 years now. Yeah, but I was actually on the West Coast for 10 years before this. Yeah, so I was like, I started in Orange County, and then I went to like LA, San Diego, and then San Francisco, and then
Still, it's.
I know, well, it's all on the coast, right? And that's the best thing about it. Yeah, and then I just 26 hours, like, that's the longest flight I've ever taken. I said to here is 26 hours. I know, right? Like, I used to get tired just driving an hour and a half, 2 hours. But this is my new record, 26 hours.
Can I get those, please?
Oh, yeah. This is actually just questions that I had. And actually, I was going to ask them, but I just I don't know if she covered it already, but like one was like the range of like how far out you start to predict.
If you don't create the conditions for collaboration.
Like, is there a range? Like I could say, 30 years out, there's going to be like flying robots. I mean, they're already.
The framework,
but you speculate that far out, or you
design systems.
like 5 years.
Yeah, so we try to stick with medium-term futures, which is 5 to 10 years. Like 5 years is close enough that you can see what the next step would be. 10 years is far enough out that you might not be here, but you can imagine it being like a legacy or something. It's always useful to start with flying cars though, because that gives you something to shoot for. Like it gives you like a guiding star, it gives you that direction, and then you work back from flying cars. What is the next thing we can do now to get that will one day get us to flying cars? It gives you something to look at. So a lot of like a few years out, 3 years out. People are already doing that. They're called your, they're your CFO group. They're doing it in the boring way. Like you want something that are going to need to think harder about and invest in a longer term strategy. You want that to see that investment over time, over that longer term.
Follow the same practice.
And my other question was, how do you go from report to
That is
business
always
proposal?
like, that's what business does.
Like, is
They
there a
just want to
process
launch
that you
an
guys
action.
follow to do
Right,
that?
we get That'll get you the
So
first
we
version.
haven't done that for this. This is
We're
actually
gonna
backwards
do
from
a
that.
longer
So we started with business
project,
proposals,
okay.
saying that this is broad enough, this is broad enough, this is so narrow, this is so narrow. What is the breadth?
Our process, what you learn.
And then it would be taking one of those themes and then going deep on the theme. And then coming up with these proposals out of that.
You are responsible for that delta.
You would either do new narrow or something, or use the existing source to brainstorm an idea.
Okay, because I'm going to say you do the SWOT analysis, but that was the report, right?
That was the form of the report.
So that's
This
three.
one piece of functionality, you now.
Now you have the broad view, and now you can pick that theme is really interesting, and then we'll do it, and then we'll go back to the other direction again, coming out of it.
It's like.
Okay.
We're also, our papers on that chair too.
A team is exactly that, they're gonna try and redo this work.
There's some more cards, yeah.
So in other words, trying to stop them from just moving into action.
Right,
Okay.
Pull the brakes a little bit, but that requires executive buy-in
Well,
too,
sure.
because they can turn around and be like, hey, he's telling me nothing this thing.
Talk tomorrow.
That person does not know what he's talking about. Like, you do what I want.
I feel like that's
So trying to have the triangulation between my team, all of these other teams, leadership, research, trying to line up the timeline and everything, all that herding of cats.
I'm not drawing. As it were.
Is how we get to the point where we are
Take that. But if it's anything like-
designing the right thing for the right person at the right time in the right way.
But what you described is designing that thing and having that solution, but yet setting it up in such a way that it could also work for these people. They have to take that initiative, though, am I correct? So it's kind
this is about-
of, that's not to be designing the right thing for the right person, it's something more, like, it starts off somewhere designing that thing for that person, but somehow there's this, adaptation or,
There's what we call it mobilizing. You make it, it's not the right
but
word.
it's kind of like, you're taking the essence of that thing, not necessarily its ultimate solution, but like its system and making it so that others can actually use it to craft their own solution. Am I understanding you?
Right, but the only way that you can do that is if we create a space where all these different people can collaborate together to
Yeah, that's what I'm
solutions.
And so that space can be a system online, it could be actual face-to-face, it could be built into like the review system where certain viewpoints have to come in.
I'll get,
Yeah.
We do things like design outcomes where we get together and get really what they want, what they expect, who wants it, what do they want, why is it needed, what is the risk if we do this, what is barely sufficient, what is sufficient, what is
No,
Or
the guy that used to wear one like that.
everybody to agree
Although you never trust
on
them.
that, yes, it's an elephant, it has a trunk, it has legs, it has a tail.
Almost perpendicular.
Get everybody to agree on the elephant, and then when we move forward, if you agreed on this desired outcome, and we have met what's explicitly detailed in the desired outcome,
This is fine, but I
can't be
know.
upset.
Yeah.
Right, if you say, I don't want to participate,
Do you
but I have a vested
I know,
interest in this, they come up with something that matches with that, what you put in details of us, then we've done our homework.
Right.
And so with a corporation, that's scale.
Oh,
That's kind of the way
Oh,
that
no, I'm surprised that you still talking email.
Yeah,
Okay.
send an email.
Nice.
I have like this.
Where do you work?
We're in Backspace,
So if you want to see like the second.
which is a tiny corporation compared to.
It's,
They have like
Hundreds of thousands of
I
emails.
think it's like 50 each, so like they do like all kinds of thousands.
It's crazy.
Oh, it's crazy. But that's a lot.
It's a lot.
So, like, you said that is a large company now.
Where we are, we have
Just because
enterprise scale
area is just like, oh, this is not just
data products, enterprise scale. Users have EA games. How do you load a table?
I don't know.
Server.
Like the guy who doesn't go on.
Good to see you. Hi.
Like my
I've seen
money
you
on
in a
meetup.
long time.
I know.
Yeah,
Well,
you see that?
I haven't.
Everything could possibly
Bark,
be
bark,
power
bark.
supplies,
Yeah.
chargers, extension cords.
Backspace.
I take
Is it
the
the one that? Yeah.
I kind of wing
feel right.
Yeah.
I'm on the USP.
Cool, okay.
No, I don't.
The other San Antonio
'Cause I love
office is really cool.
Yeah,
We hosted a hackathon there.
Yeah.
Thing like that.
Came in 4 years ago.
Like literally just like lived in the back of my car.
It's an abandoned mall.
Oh, is it?
And
Oh.
they renovated it into
Uh-huh.
like a tech wonderland. So there's
Yeah,
like,
Really?
there's like a curly slide from
Uh-huh.
floor 2 to floor 1.
Hey, good seeing you. Yeah, you too.
There's like video game consoles in each wing and like
How fun.
arcades, and it's definitely like a type of fun land for engineers.
What is?
It really does sound fun.
The
Do you need some help right
Rackspace
now?
headquarters.
No, I got my little mini board. So I put this on here, and it's pressure sensitive, so I can just move it one side and move it.
Wait, it's pressure.
Yeah. Don't forget your snacks.
Like little mini boards, so
I'm gonna open this. Can I open this or just have a couple?
Yeah.
Peanut butter.
I realized I should have like cups or plates or something.
It's all right.
I was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yes.
These snacks are my favorite.
Oh, man, that's not. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, y'all.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Thank
Well,
This was great.
I was contemplating if I should just go on the YouTube channel and if it would be recorded and if it would stream in and save it in mute, but I'm just hanging out.
Well, I thought I was like, if I offered a live stream it, no one will show up.
Yeah, right, that's the thing.
You want it in the pool?
But it is,
Do it what?
isn't every one of these websites?
I don't know. I saw the camera here is green and the camera here is red. I'm wondering if it just records us.
That one records the screen.
Right, but it's lit up red. That one's lit up green.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I assume whomever the guy that came in here earlier will probably be back there at 9. I'll get whatever from him.
Successfully set it up right.
I think he had it on his phone. And as soon as
He pointed his phone at that.
How was the tiny house jamboree? I
It was
missed it.
cool. Oh, man.
Gonna do another
that's
one?
Cool. Probably in a year maybe now.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's gonna be here 100%, but it was cool if it is again. Because I think there's a lot of people that didn't get a chance to make it.
I didn't get a chance to make it. Even though it was 2 days.
Yeah.
Still.
It was 4 days. It's,
Oh, never mind. Now I'm really impressed. But yeah, I'm so sad because I wanted to go shopping for my little house.
Oh my god.
Damn it.
Everything was all school buses.
Our company decided to swim across the highway.
I think this was an interesting one because it's totally.
Because it's, oh yeah, you are.
Yeah.
117 and Trinity.
Inside the store.
Right.
I mean, that's
There's-
really
there's
something
plenty of
else.
parking
If you're living in a van,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
There's still lots
Car,
to
yeah.
in that area.
I would like to have a house with a
I live
cellar.
in-
A cellar that I can
Half
go
a
down
mile
into.
outside of
White cellar.
You know, just.
Oh, like a
Okay.
trap door.
Yeah, kind of a trap,
Yeah,
kind of like a.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Tornado cellar.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I
Wait,
can.
it's
Right, yeah,
Oh,
I,
shelter.
I ride down a flat
Yeah,
all the time.
there's this apocalypse. I
Oh,
got
yeah.
this somewhere, you
Oh,
know.
like stringed underground.
Exactly.
Just
I
the
can
far
just
side
like pull my
of the airport from-
oriental rug over the trap door, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think the dome design that we have, like, we can actually just build
looking at
it
houses.
and
I heard
then.
so
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
You can
nice.
actually watch it on the roof.
That's what we do.
And then I
That's
had
really
to-
nice. So it looks kind of like one of the ancient burial mounds,
I think I feel like
you know, from the Etruscans.
Yeah.
Before everything.
Yeah, I actually have
So if you're over 14 square feet,
Yes, I
it's
definitely want a car.
So
You don't have your phone with you?
all the,
I have.
Do people do that? Oh,
No,
you do?
I do,
all,
but I have
all
two.
of what I really had was going to a lot of houses.
The other ones are the big bags on, so.
Lowell Square.
There's a whole bunch of prefab
Jesus,
houses.
this.
I know.
I got mentioned there.
This keeps me,
15 years, 15 years.
I like
those prefab
This is the only thing that I wear that doesn't knock me down.
have, because they're like.
But it also reminds
like,
everything.
everything should be fine, and after that, it's almost like you're starting to fall apart.
Okay.
And we're at like 18 to 25 years for a lot of houses, so they're all like 11,
lights all the way around.
Oh, that's nice.
And so
yeah, did it like
they just like,
2
they paved
Uh-huh.
walking paths.
But
Wow.
a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
So like,
is
yeah,
your
they
father,
built like a random,
Yeah.
road that like
Okay.
cuts
And
like
he's
this,
just, like,
in between, there's a square.
You're
It's
among
like-
the youngest, aren't you?
Like, cuts
Yeah,
through it. That
but
wasn't
it
walk
was
like
like
that.
7.
They just paved, and it was clear
No,
enough that
no, it's not.
people were
Like
driving the cars through that hole already anyway, so there's like.
You're not the youngest though, but you're in the lower end,
Super
you're the
bizarre.
younger end.
Yeah, we love it.
Uh-huh.
I love that.
anymore.
No.
But yeah, they're
It'll be years before I
he still stayed up longer than me. He drove further than I could. I was like passed out. And every
It was
time he
good.
gets up earlier, he gets all his stuff done, and like his routines.
8
Just
years.
Like, I don't know if he keeps going. He has so much like mental energy.
He
like,
does.
go-
Focus.
I love
That's
28 years of
focus.
flat.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Did you ever see this movie called Hands on the Hard Body?
No.
You should watch it.
Okay.
It's a case in point about older people in
We
focus.
still have it.
Okay.
It is a great movie. In its
Yeah.
day, I think it came out in like '97.
Okay.
It's a documentary about
Master of Threes.
I can't remember what company did it, but it was the competition, Hands on a Hard Body. Go home and watch it. It is fabulous. But the competition is, there is this brand new pickup truck,
Yeah.
and the competition is you have to put both hands on the
Oh,
truck.
yeah.
You know what
I've
I'm
seen
talking?
that one. And
Yeah,
stand there
and
and
stand
then-
there, and the last man standing was the oldest guy there. And he was the first one on and the last one off, if he wanted, and he said in there it's because he could focus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
You could pay for
I think
it.
it's a marketing movie, right? Like, or it's they're doing that as a marketing event.
It was a marketing event.
Yeah.
One-
Well, I mean, Hands on the Heart, like, it was about a company that was doing a marketing event.
Yeah.
The movie was not a marketing event.
Right.
So,
Right, that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
you then,
But
you then
it was
choose
so
to pay
true,
for
it was great, I mean, you really like, you get really
Yeah.
sucked into it, like, oh my god, I can see so-and-so's getting weak, no! Don't do it! Yeah, it's good.
That's pretty funny. I just can't imagine that somebody would stand there with that amount of time. to do
Days.
that, right? Like,
Days and nights,
yeah.
but you did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long was it? Yeah.
I think it was like 3 or 4 days. So it was some crazy amount, but nobody
I'm
else
sure there'd be
could,
a way to fit it.
nobody could hang with the big dog, you know?
Yeah.
They just couldn't do it.
So wait, he didn't eat or drink or did he still?
You can have food, but you can't sleep and you can't sit, you have to
I
stand.
mean, my master's
Yeah.
degree is in theology, art, and culture.
Yeah, in a way, it was kind of like, you know, the dance-a-thons
Yeah.
from the 30s.
Okay.
You know, people were just like falling down, you know, because they're on like, I don't know, the 80th hour of continuously dancing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was one of those
One of my former
endurance types of
students.
things. But anyway, I got a jet. It was
Yeah,
good
it's
seeing
nice to
you.
see you.
Yes, I know, I'll see you around.
Yeah, message me or
Yeah.
I'll be around.
I have your, yeah, I do have your email, so,
Yeah.
good.
But keep me posted on what you're doing and just.
Isn't that cool?
Just gonna teach.
Any good
I'm
stuff?
gonna, yeah, finally I've got a small
for-
window of break
like,
now to
yeah.
reevaluate all the things.
Yeah, probably.
You were really busy.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think you had signed up to like 1,000 meetups. I mean, just, I can only imagine
That's what he did is
inbox
undergrad.
is like, but.
No, it's zero anywhere near.
I
He was like, I was
was
gonna
like
post
a-
that comment, how do you
like-
get from 300,000?
But his focus was on.
I can't even imagine.
Like immediate.
I get overwhelmed with
Like
10.
my master's
Ten.
degree, like
Yeah.
my
I got
thesis
like,
was about.
I got 10 counts. Like,
So,
Good, this was so great. Enjoy.
Yeah.
And I know I'll see you around.
Yeah, I'll be starting, I'm just starting to get back into the meetup line, so
Okay.
that'll be cool to like.
She's got a coffee talk at USAA, and I think Interaction meetup is going to start up again.
Cool.
Yeah, I know, I miss it. Good meeting you. Adios.
Yeah, nice meeting you too, yeah.
You gonna walk out? I'll walk out with you.
Yeah.
I gotta go out. Let's go out. Hey. All right.
I'm gonna wait,
You gotta wait? Okay.
2 more minutes. I'm gonna wait for the guy to come.
All right.
Good to see you.
You too. I'll see you next week. Enjoy your new job.
Thank you.
Cool, so you're working at Del Maple now?
Uh-huh.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. Yeah. That sounds really cool. Yeah. Their office is nice too, right?
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's like right off for like 15.
Oh yeah, yeah. I went in that building, it's like really cool. I think there's an event coming up there about something, the future of health or how to design
I'm in the Design Institute in middle school.
Okay.
So I work in the Design Institute.
Yeah. That's that office upstairs, right?
In the hall, in the hall.
Yeah.
So I've been there for about
I think it's
sweet spot.
Is it Stanley that started that, or
Stacy.
Stacy? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Stacy's my supervisor.
Okay. Yeah, it's a smart guy.
Yes.
He knows about
He's
that.
very well connected.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of sway in the world.
Oh yeah. That's cool, man. It's an interesting space, and I think design is all about speculation. So like, I think everybody can have a part of that, like conversation or a place to be and have a conversation in it. But I think it's also going to challenge a little bit traditional, all the people that have like degrees and PhDs or doctors or whatever, like, that are educated but have this theoretical kind of intuition, and then challenging that with like design and practicality.
Yeah.
And all of the rest of it.
That's
That's
okay.
where they. That's
Should
where
go there
they're.
and shit.
Yeah, that's where you guys. Figure out a couple things in here. Cool. All right, man. I'll see you next time. Yeah, it's good to see you too. Yeah, I'll keep in touch.
Definitely. I'm sure I'll see you around.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you.
Was one of the cameras on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were live streaming.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
How do I access that?
It's actually still going, so I'm going to turn this off.